Hello, we are live. Good afternoon. Yeah, we're 1 o'clock. Good afternoon, everybody. It's one of those days. Welcome to this episode. I don't even know what episode number it is of the Wellbeing chat. There is a bit of a pre-ramble, Lou, so don't worry. This is on purpose, just because I want people to join before I get going. So if you are here, please say hello, and please. If you have any questions for Lou or me, but probably Lou because she's the super expert, please ask, and we will hopefully get really good answers. And I will ask her for sure. But otherwise, just give us kind of 40 seconds, 30 seconds for me to continue rambling on, and then we'll get started. I told you, Lou, it's very informal. This is just
have my cup of tea while you're around one.
Yeah. Enjoy it. I think everybody gets to enjoy this pre-ramble, pre-episode ramble is probably what I should say, pre-podcast ramble. And you know what, Lou? I say this on the probably beginning of every episode, is that if somebody just listens to this on Spotify, they're going to hear all of this, so it doesn't get edited, and so they're going like, what is this guy doing? He says the exact same thing at the beginning of every podcast, basically.
Well, some podcasts have the sponsorship right at the beginning anyway, which is brutal to listen to. So this is actually probably a bit more entertaining.
Exactly, right? Exactly. And it just gets us settled. But then it's starting the podcast, which is then now really hard because I've just got to stop rambling. Anyway, we'll do that now because it seems like a good timing and it is giving people 90 seconds to join. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us. If you are here, please say hello and add your questions to the comments. I will get around to asking those to Lou as we go, whilst I'm trying to multitask as somebody who struggles to focus on one thing at a time. We'll see how that goes. But anyway, thank you for joining. Really good conversation we're about to have around performance psychology, looking at athletes and what they do to perform at their best, how we can take that information and use it on professionals. And this is just all up my wheelhouse. I love this topic because it combines psychology, performance, and sport, which is three of my favorite things. So before we kind of get started, the best thing for me to do, Lou, is just to get you to say hi, and then we'll do the introductions.
Hi.
There you go. Look, it's simple. The questions will get harder from there. Look, what I would do is I quickly introduce myself, get out of the way, and then I'll get you to do a proper introduction. So if you haven't met me or been to one of these podcasts before, my name's Rich. I am the founder and CEO of Employees Health. I'm a high-performance executive coach, and I help senior leaders, managers, and teams perform at their best through coaching, through training, and help, getting them to think about what they can do to be better. And Employees Health is a workplace wellbeing company. Just educates teams and how they can look after their health and wellbeing. If you want to know more about that, drop me a line and we can have a conversation. But today I am joined by Lou, who is a performance psychologist, and actually probably a longer title than that. So rather than me butcher this, Lou, I'm going to let you introduce yourself and share exactly what you are, who you are, and what you do.
Well, no, it's always hard. I can come under many titles. So by trade, I guess I'm a practitioner psychologist, but a sports psychologist. Mm-hmm. And I work across a number of different areas. So sport being one, and the corporate business world being another. I might define myself as a human performance psychologist in that, or a high performance coach. So the language really tends to fit where the context that I'm in. But it's really all about helping people, humans in the world that they are, thrive and get the most out of themselves and help them to achieve what they want to.
Yeah, awesome. You have to define the right term for the person in front of you, right?
Yeah. Well, it's always interesting when you go into the corporate world and you talk about business coaching, but then you're in the sporting world and coaching is has a very different meaning.
Yeah, and I have that coming from the PT background. As you say coach, I think, okay, so you coach a sports team. Well, no, I'm actually more of a bit, I say business coach, but then you think business coach, I think, okay, you're going to help me build my business it's more around actually the performance of the individual. So it's a hard one to justify or find the right term anyway.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think for me, the important word that I use in my title is psychologist. It's a protected term. And the training and the experience that I've had in that world allows me to dive a bit deeper into the work I do.
Yeah, 100%. This is why I'm super excited about this conversation, because that's the bit I really love most. So what I'd like to know is your journey, really, the why and the how you are where you are today and what you do.
Oh, go back now all those years. So I got into. I was always very fortunate because I realised fairly early on what I wanted to do. It was just how do I go about getting there? At school, I grew up with a twin brother and an older sister, but me and my twin brother, we would just kind of run around, chuck a ball around, play all sports together. So sport was always in my DNA. And so through that, was in every team, played a lot of different sports, county level, some at national level. And I think in an athletics camp came across someone who had seen a sports psychologist, and I was like, that just sounds really interesting. And then I remember one of my old school friends broke her arm doing the high jump and couldn't return to it, found it really hard to return to it. And I thought, that's really interesting too. And just thought, okay, cool. I'm going to follow that path. And so did an undergrad at Birmingham Uni in psychology and sports science. Mm-hmm. And then you're like, okay, now what do I do? I've got that. Where do I go from here? I think someone told me to go into human resources, but I was like, I'm sure that's not quite the right angle. And then I found a book that talked about postgraduate studies in applied sports psychology all around the world. So I was like, wow. So I ended up applying to a couple of places, and I got into Ottawa University to study an MA in human kinetics, it was called, which it was basically applied sports psychology with, and my supervisor was Terry Orlick, who's one of the grandfathers of sports psychology, a real legend and phenomenal guy, and I had a great group of other students with me in the master's program, which was brilliant. And the dissertation was also, it was an applied dissertation rather than a research dissertation. Mm-hmm. And that's always been my area of expertise and passion has been the applied side. Love learning about the research. My real interest is learning how to apply it to the real world context and to have impact. Mm-hmm. And so that's how I did my dissertation, and I actually came back to Bath Uni during that time and did some work with the Lawn Tennis Association, the British Triathlon Federation. And then once I finished my master's, they both employed me, which was great. So I went straight to being a self-employed sports psychologist there. And then my memory gets a bit hazy over these next 22 years. But I worked Bath Uni, worked at Bristol Uni at their high performance teams. Did some work with Bristol Rugby in the academy years and years ago, and then I got a role, and I'm still doing the LTA in the British Triathlon Federation work. I got a role with the EIS, so for the Beijing cycle. I worked with British archery in the Beijing cycle. I'd done the Commonwealth Games, the triathlon in 2002 in Manchester. So I've done every summer games. When I say I've worked with athletes and coaches and performance directors that have gone to every summer games and Commonwealth Games. I have worked with an athlete that went to a Winter Games. And I've done the Women's Ashes Tour in 2008. And I have most recently done a Rugby World Cup with the Women's Welsh team a couple of years ago in New Zealand, which was an incredible experience. And then about 5 years ago, and I've worked at Sport Wales. I did EIS for 2 years. I worked at Sport Wales for 12 years, and I led the psychology team there for about 5 years. I've worked with some brilliant sports psychs along the way. Kath Shearer, Joy Bringer, been phenomenal. And then took the plunge to go back into self-employment a couple of years ago, and have worked. I now work across sport and corporate. Sport's my first passion. That's what I love doing, and I'm building up my work in the corporate world, which I'm finding absolutely fascinating, because it really is the same stuff, just a different context. And actually, I'm understanding, exploring how it all works, and loving it. Met some really fascinating people. I love people. I love working out what helps them, what makes them tick, what do they want to get out of their worlds, and how to improve that, individuals and teams, and seeing the impact that I can have and the influence I can have on people, and just, and how that then impacts their lives, not just in work, but outside of work as well.
Yeah. I love that. All those great things, and now you're here on my podcast. I mean, it's the top.
I mean, it's all led me to you, Rich. So yeah, finally made it.
Oh, yeah, exactly. You finally made it. What can I say? I'm giving everybody a chance. No, wicked. Thank you for sharing. Because it is interesting that you've done all this stuff and over such a long period of time. It'd be interesting to know the kind of evolution between the two. Because I feel like psychology, in this kind of actual sense of supporting mindsets and supporting the way people think about this kind of stuff, has grown throughout that period. What do you see as the big difference between kind of when you started supporting these sports teams and doing the first group of athletes going to the Olympics to where it is now?
So, I mean, I think it's definitely different. It's better now. Mm-hmm. There are a lot more psychologists working in sports, which absolutely is needed. A lot more is needed. I think it's always a challenge because the stuff we work on is invisible. Mm-hmm. And so much of everything else is visible in sports. If someone does some really great work with a strength and conditioning coach, everyone can see that. They can see the numbers that are and data that is produced by a biomechanist or a physiologist. They can see the food and nutrition, right? So our stuff is really hard because it's invisible. They can feel it, they can notice it, but actually it's really hard to understand how to work with it. And I think we've moved from an evolution of I wouldn't go near that. Mm-hmm. It's pink and fluffy. To right, I know we need it, but I don't really know how we work with it in our context. Mm-hmm. To actually, okay, I've worked with a couple of psychologists now. I know a bit more about it. This is what I want, and this is what I'd like to go out and get. We're definitely getting to that point in some places. Not every place, but absolutely in some places for sure.
Okay, and so then what does that look like? What does it look like, and what sort of things are you doing to help athletes? What does that work look like?
I mean, it is interesting when you talk about the evolution, because I guess when I first started out, it was very much one-to-one support with an athlete. Then it turned out to kind of an athlete and a coach. We work together, and then kind of as you grow up, develop, you're looking more kind of team, system, environment, organization around the athletes, around the coaches and the staff. So it's not when you go out to a World Cup with a Welsh women's team, you're not just working with the athletes, you're supporting all the staff, and there's a huge amount of staff that go out with the team. So there's a lot to it. So it's kind of an all-encompassing experience and role, and I mean it's a very privileged role as well. I think that's really important to understand that because it's invisible, it's really important to know that what you're working on is the right thing to be working on. That you actually hold. This is you're supporting people's lives, their brains, how they think, what they believe in, what they think about themselves and others, their relationships. So I really hold it kind of preciously and in a state that I don't take anything for granted, and I feel very I have some extraordinary experiences because you get to know people really well. They tell you so much about themselves, and yet they know nothing or hardly anything about you. Although after 2 or 3 Olympic cycles, they do get to know you fairly well as well. So yeah, it's I feel it's a very privileged, unique role to be in, and I'm very grateful for that. I absolutely adore what I do. I would say in terms of I feel like I've gone way off your question here. What was your question, Rich?
Looking at the what's the work in that, and I guess I've probably got a better question now considering what you just said. What's the difference between the work you do with the athlete and then the work you do with the team around just that team, that coach, the S&C people, and then how does that, and then the work with the organisation as well?
So in terms of the individual work, I mean, I guess some of the principles are exactly the same. So with the individual, I'll often speak. Again, it also depends on what level the athlete's at. But in terms of when an athlete comes to me, I'll often try and speak to the coach as well. The first session I'll often try and do together. Sometimes I'll work with the athlete and coach all the way through together. Sometimes just the athlete, and then I'll review with the coach and athlete every couple of months. Depends on their relationship, what the athlete's needs and wants are. There's often some reactive stuff to work on to begin with, and then you head into more the proactive work. And I think that's where sports psychology is different from other psychologies. There's a lot of it in that proactive space. It's about preparing athletes, people to be better in under pressure environments. I mean, every environment and every day you go into is new, right? But what are the strategies you can take into that you know and have worked on that's going to give you the best opportunity for you to perform at your best at that time? And that's what we really do, is kind of work on creating the best opportunities for athletes to enable their performances to come out in high pressure. So that's what I'd work on with athletes. So my first session would literally entail, where have you come from, where you're at now, where do you want to go, and then come back to where they are at now and what's going to help them. What can we take from what they've been through already? What have they learned? What are the strengths? What are the areas that they want support on? How are we going to get them to where they want to go? And we'll start kind of on a program from there. So you've got that needs analysis at the beginning. And then with teams, it's pretty much the same. So instead of you've got the coach, and I guess in corporate teams, you've got the leaders or the senior leadership team. You kind of talk to them, figure it out. With teams, I like to kind of work out what the experience of the team is. So spend some time speaking to all the individual members of the team, spending the time in the environment. So in sports teams, going out and just watching training, watching competition, hanging out in the training sessions, spending time with the staff. I see the staff and athletes all as one team, because they really all need to be on the same page, and it's understanding what's going on with that. Are they all heading in the right direction? They all understand what the goal is, the shared goal. So you kind of pick up on, you do kind of a team needs analysis, and then I mean with athletes and teams, really, I mean, your main link is the coach, and without the coach on board, you really don't have anywhere to go. I would suggest, I guess, unless the specific piece of work is just with the athlete. But to me, your coach is the link with that. And then also forming great links with the physio and the doc, because athletes always offload to physios and soft tissue therapists as the way it goes. So, make them your besties, and they're always brilliant anyway. So that's great. That really helps, and just having that link, especially with the doctor as well, because that's really important from a mental health and well-being and understanding. So understanding your area of competence, so you know when to refer at what point and to who. I try and have links with the clinical psych as well for that reason. To whether there's one in the sport, which would be great if all sport had that. Not every sport has that, but then also away from sport, or some other counselling services. So what kind of mental health issues that you can support might not be performance issues that you're working on, but you can refer And then from a system point of view, I do some work with performance directors, CEOs, just looking at kind of the wider environment, the systems, the policies, the procedures around the team. Are they supporting athletes and staff to thrive in that environment, or actually are they against the values? Are they dampening it down? Are they not supporting the motivation and the drive that you want to kind of push up? But again, it depends on how engaged they are too. Yeah, I mean, it's every day is different.
Yeah. That, I mean, it's really interesting, and we'll dive into a little bit more of that shortly. But thinking about that system piece, and I know then my brain went to as my brain does, like a big football club who have got like their men's first team and ladies first team. Oh, sorry, they've got the team which people probably think of most, right? So if you think about football, Premier League, you're thinking of me and West Ham's men's team, but there is also a ladies team. There is also a youth ladies teams. There's also the reserves. There's the 21s. There's the 18, all the way through to kids, right?
Yeah.
How much do you get involved in that? With a scenario which obviously you've been in, what does that look like?
Well, I guess, I mean, it depends. I mean, I've been involved at all levels of the pathway up to the top level. And I don't know, maybe it's more beneficial to talk about what the ideal would look like. And I can't to support sports moving forward. I always say to sports, in an ideal world, you'd have the same number of psychologists as you do as physios. And the amount of jaws that kind of hit the floor. What? It's like, well, it's the same stuff we work on. And, if you've got one psych who is working with the whole entire team and all the staff, and maybe you've gone up one site, they can do the men's and the women's team. But if you had a physio doing that, what state do you think physically the teams would be in, and how overworked do you think that physio would be? Well, that's the same as the psychologist. And I also think it is really beneficial to have at least two psychs involved, because the most important part of working with a psych is your working relationship. Now, not everybody's going to get on with everybody else, and actually if you're not going to get on with one person, having someone else is quite key. Because I guess one of the beliefs early on in my career that I found was, if people didn't get on with a physio, they're like, oh, I just go and get a new physio. But if they didn't get on with a psychologist, they were like, well, I don't need psych. And I was like, no, you just need a different psychologist.
Yeah.
So I think it's really helpful to have at least two psychs. I think it's and have a referral mechanism. But I would say, have the same amount of psychs as you have physios. Why would you? Then you've got all the body covered.
Yeah. Again, I think that's it, right? I think that's a really good way to finish that kind of piece around that. It's not just the body which is being looked after at that point. It's the mindset. It's the mental health. It's making sure people are happy going into it. They're positive. They have belief, all that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, and I do think we tend to pour more money, obviously, in the elite level, and I think there's definitely a case to say a lot more work needs to be done in the pathway to develop these skills early on, as we know that there's at certain points, certain age groups and certain genders, there's a big dropout, right? There might be less dropout if more psychological skills are developed early on, and also the right ones, with the people that really know what they're talking about. And there's definitely there's real experts in delivering psychology at a youth level. They're different skills than if you're at an elite level. So it's working around that. There's some great Camilla Knight does some great work at Swansea University on that, and her stuff's really interesting to read. So yeah, it's having a strategy around psychology is really important for all sports, so that you've got a psychologically informed environment, all the athletes and all the staff work in. And you can see it's just as important when you talk about football and the managers and the high pressure environment, and then you can talk about the WRU at the moment and what Warren Gatland is going through. We just lost a women's coach as well. and that's got to be, it's a very tough environment for them. What support are they getting? So it's really important to have those psychologically informed environment developed by the big organisations, the system around the athletes and staff, all the way through, and then having the support wrapped around that.
Yeah, I love that. And then it's, as you said, it's so important for every level of that. And in every, not just thinking about the athletes, but it's also thinking of people who are supporting those athletes as well.
We're in a different age now where, values and how we feel and mental health, we're in a different position. And actually, gone are the days where you can tell an athlete what to do and they'll do it. They have to understand why they're doing it. It's really important for them to do that. It's really important for their motivation. So actually, we have to teach and support and coach in a different way now that is harder. And actually, in sport, the people who are doing the teaching are, they're older but they're coaching a very younger generation, and that must be hard too as well. And you're often, as a coach, you end up coaching how you were coached to start off with, until you realize actually, there's a lot more to it, and then you learn all the other things around coach. And I think we're talking about coaches quite a lot. Sporting coach, I think it's one of the hardest jobs out there in sport, is it? Because it is no longer just coaching, it's everything else. It's psychology, it's physiology, it's biomechanics, it's strength and conditioning, it's physio, and all of those are, 1,000 PhDs all in themselves, right? But actually having a little bit all of that, and then it's managing that around the athlete, and often coaches become, a confidant for some of the athletes, or they spend more time with the coaches than anybody else in their lives, and their partner or their parents, so I think it's a really, and yet your outcome you're not in control of, because the athlete is, or the team is, and that is so hard. And I definitely think more support is needed for sporting coaches and the systems and the staff around. But
supporting them, also the education as well, right? I helping them understand how to get the best out of their individuals, especially in a team environment. Like when you're working as a coach with an individual, you know what they need to be motivated to get the best out of them. But when you've got 15 players, rugby 2020, 22, 23 players that you need to know how to motivate, how to create a positive environment and a performance out of them, it's really difficult to have 23 different players, and then everybody else doing that as well, and saying the right words, using the right messaging. I see it as a really difficult thing, and it's one of the things I kind of really like about psychology.
Yeah, and there's a big part to play in that, and to work really quite closely with the coaches in sport, for sure.
Going back to the work you do with athletes, what's the kind of key things that you would work with them on, the main areas?
I could reel off a lot of different kind of things I would do, but I think for me, I do work quite hard on really helping them to define what success means to them. It's very easy in sport to say gold medal at this Olympics or Paralympics, or winning the World Cup or that type of thing, and that's a very outcome orientated goal, which is great to have and can be hugely motivational. But actually, part of being an athlete, and it's the same in the corporate world, is motivations really key, and drive, and helping you focus in the right direction. And if you can focus on something that you can actually control, whereas your outcome you can't control, is going to be a much more enjoyable journey. So there's a lot about kind of define what I would, helping them define what success means to them, helping them to find their own identity, so that it's not I'm a discus thrower, or I'm a triathlete, or I'm a rugby player. It's I'm me, and part of me plays rugby, and the other part of me does this, that. So it's finding their identity, and it's not just solely wrapped up in the sport. That's really important. I think KJT just did a talk, or just talked about that being important in her journey as well. It's having identity wrapped up in something that you can control rather than not control, because also we all know that athletes' careers will finish at some point, right? And that's a really important transition. So I will often work with athletes that when they're doing that, to support them on that transition next, because that's any transition is a real challenge. There's lots of people called performance lifestyle advisors, and they do some fantastic work on transitions out there. So it's really kind of defining success, defining who they are, and then how do they then, what are their needs? What have they got that's helped them get to where they are already, that's going to help them move them forward to kind of that success, whatever they've defined. And then what are their needs right now? What are the skills they need? And I think that's what I've always loved sport, wanted to work in sport, because I do think sport's a great vehicle for learning and developing and growing skills to support you in life, right? And sport is kind of a magnified version of life, because elite sport's got huge highs and huge lows, and on a regular seasonal basis, as most people who are football fans realise that, or rugby fans, whatever, you'll go through them as well. But you can imagine athletes and staff go through those a lot harder and they're tougher. And as a psych, I've gone through many highs and many lows with athletes and coaches and stuff. So it's managing those. You can't get away from those, and that's what elite sports are not for everybody, because that's really, really hard. But actually, if you can support an athlete to do that, life gets much easier afterwards to help them deliver that. So so it's helping do that, whilst also what is going to help them create the opportunity for them to perform to their best when they need to, when they want to, when it matters, on that one day, or it might be consistently over 5 days, depending on what sport, or 2 weeks, 3 weeks, what sport they're doing. So it's kind of defining what that looks like if you're looking, or is it just, what does success look like in that, and then how do we create the skills to enable that to happen?
What do we need? What's the gap? Yeah, no, I think that's really great. And I think you started it all off by saying, I think it's even before this, to answering that question, is about it's very proactive more than reactive.
It is. It's because we know what's coming up. We know the season's got so I do some stuff in athletics now. We know we've got Europeans, there's Worlds, then there's Commonwealth Games in Glasgow coming up, and then you've got LA Olympics, Paralympics. So we've already got some defined stuff coming up. We know what there's some measures of, and it's right. What do we need to get? What's gone on so far? What do we need to improve on to get the performances that you need? And I work really closely with the other staff, coaches and physios.
Nice. I've got a question which has kind of popped into my head, and it'd be interesting to see what your answer is, because people ask me as a performance coach, obviously not a performance psychologist, but what creates performance? And one of my biggest things is thinking about what makes the greatest of the great. And so I'm going to ask you a very similar question. What makes the greatest stand out in your mind when it comes to this stuff?
I mean, it depends on what you mean by the greatest, because we have those athletes absolutely that stand out. They tend to be in the popular sports that we see in the news all the time. So obviously, Nadal's just retired from tennis. Absolute legend, brilliant. And, phenomenal what he's achieved. I know some of the greats in other sports that people wouldn't know they're not household names. And I think becoming to the top of your game, there's being able to perform consistently year in, year out. Look how long those tennis legends have all been playing at that, that level, so consistently. And there was a study. I think there's a study done on tennis players, top 25 tennis players and what made the difference between the top 5 and the top and the rest of them. And actually, it was about what they thought about. That was a big difference in that top 5. Mm-hmm. So for me, it really is. It's doing the little things that make the differences. It's mm-hmm. the 1%ers and doing them consistently, mm-hmm. and that's what you'll see. So you'll have the athletes who do the 1%ers that make them physically robust, mm-hmm. and psychologically robust, so mm-hmm. that they can deliver season in, season out. Mm-hmm. They train smart, and they don't mm-hmm. train hard, and they compete smart, and they don't compete hard, and they learn along the journey about themselves, because every season they are different. They're a year older, they're a year more developed. How they would have performed 20 years ago when they're at the top is different now. They tend to do less physical stuff mm-hmm. later, because they've done all the volume early on. So yeah, it's that, for me, it's that consistent physical and psychological kind of adherence to all the strategies that help them perform to their best. That's what makes a difference with the greats.
Yeah, love that. It's a really great answer. It's not something which I didn't. That's not what I was expecting you to say. Even along the lines of the area, I guess. I think it would be more about a belief or a personality or wherever it might be.
Lots of people have that. Lots of people have those.
Yeah, exactly.
And you absolutely do need that. And I don't work with anyone that doesn't. It's how we can enhance those things. I think if you've got all of that, and that you understand that it's all that other stuff that you do helps you to that top. It's never one thing. There's never a silver bullet.
Yeah.
There's never magic dust. I can't bring up a little magic wand, and I'd love to. I mean, it'd be great. I mean, it would put me out of work probably.
Pretty quickly.
There's this, the intentional stuff that's really important to do.
Yeah, I love that. Grant asked a question. Grant actually is an ex-elite performer as well. He played for Wimbledon with Vinnie Jones, so he's been at that level. If it's all right, Grant. Yeah. His question is, and let me see if I can show it onto the here as well. How relevant is imposter syndrome with both the sports people and business people you have worked with, and how does the sport coaching you provide differ from each group?
I find imposter syndrome a really interesting use of language, and actually we don't use it a lot in sport, but having moved into the corporate world in the last 5 years, it's used a lot, and I guess I don't tend to go really near it in relation to kind of what as a syndrome. I don't know how helpful language is when it's kind of I like to look at, okay, why do you think you've got imposter syndrome? What's going on? And it's normally around confidence and insecurities. So I'll look more around that and belief. So there's obviously quite a bit in sport in terms of, there's a lot of, you're on TV, you're compared, there's measurements, you can't get away from it. But actually it's what you'd work on the same stuff in relation to, it's really important to focus on what you can control, on what your aim is for that competition. So yeah, because actually, we're all humans, and we're all doing a task, and it's the same in business. You're all doing a task and you're doing the doing. It's the human doing the doing, and often the human stuff gets in the way of the doing. And I work on how can we get the human stuff helping the doing part. So absolutely, it's the same in sport and business. It's just different terminology used for it. I would just always explore what people mean by imposter syndrome and how they define it. It comes out in different ways, and if I'm supporting someone working on that, I'll look at those bits rather than specifically that
big title.
Yeah. I don't know whether it helps or hinders some people. It's the same with any kind of diagnosis or label. It can help, can hinder. To me, it's what's underneath that, and what are you dealing with just the symptoms of what you're seeing, or actually are you dealing with the causes? And I think that's why I really enjoy being a psych, because I can really hit some of the causes, and otherwise you're constantly dealing with the symptoms, and they'll constantly come up. What's actually underneath that's causing those things to happen, and therefore what are the things we need to deal with there.
Yeah, I love that. And I think you use the term labeling, which I think is interesting as answering that question around imposter syndrome. If you label yourself with imposter syndrome, or if you label yourself with one of those elements underneath it, lack of confidence, that could be the thing which is kind of stopping you, enabling you from reaching that potential, because you're always going to label yourself if I don't have that much confidence. And so your confidence is always low going into the things.
I don't know that many people that don't have some insecurities or some part of who they are that they struggle with. And actually, that there's quite a lot of athletes who do have that, and actually that's helped them drive them forward to be better. God, that wasn't very good. I need to do that. What do I need to do to be better? But it's holding it lightly rather than it being the whole thing they focus on. And seeing actually having some of those voices has helped push them forward. Because if you get rid of it completely, then is that going to help them? I've dealt with some athletes that are so overconfident, it doesn't help either. Because then they're not working on the little things that help them be better at what they do. They're like, I'm just going to go and smash this. You're like, do you know how? No, I'm just going to do it. Well, all right, let's just see how that goes. So it's I think some of the insecurities can help as long as you're aware of them and you understand them, you understand where they come from, and then you can work with them and play with them so that they help you. They might then become less as insecurities, but it's understanding that they're an important part of you, which will then help your identity as well. What you think about yourself and how much you care about yourself and what you believe in, who you are.
Yeah, I love that. Grant, thanks for the question. Great question. So with all of that shared, looking at sport, and I wanted to look at sport because I think you can pick out real good examples of elite level sport. I want to move this into kind of those learnings and bringing it into the business world. And what do you think? So, what do you think professionals can learn from elite sport and sport teams in creating performance?
I think one of the things we touched upon that I think would be helpful is looking at those psychologically informed environments that you would work on around teams and coaches. I think that's, we talk about psychological safety, but actually I quite like looking at psychologically informed environments, which kind of works on more than psychological safety, and enabling everybody to thrive in the environments they're in. And I think within that, I think really looking at the intrinsic motivation of staff, of their employees. I think it's really easy, in sport we talk about the extrinsic and intrinsic motivation really easily, and everyone understands that. But actually when you go into the corporate business world, it's so extrinsically driven and everyone's very task orientated. They forget about the human side that needs to be nourished and nurtured to allow you to actually deliver that performance. And I actually think that, it's simple things that, maybe try a 4-day week and see if productivity goes up. And then they have done that in some businesses and it actually does go up, or finish the day an hour early and see if that drives productivity up. Because actually sleep and energy, like we've only got 24 hours in a day, you can't change time. And therefore it's then what do we do with that time and how do we maintain a good level of energy? What do we need to do that allow, going to the gym, having time to be social, having time to just sit down and read a book, or, what do we do to re-energize and renew ourselves? And then what is it in work that makes us feel good about us? That's the internal intrinsic stuff that's really important. And having a passionate team that are really driven by what they're passionate about, rather than driven by a threat response of fear for not finishing tasks, is way better and way more productive. And I think that's like fear is a huge motivating emotion. However, it only lasts so long, and it's not healthy, and it leads to burnout and all sorts of mental health issues. So how do we maintain the drive system of us humans how do we use and maintain that drive system to support performance rather than maintain and use the threat system, which we're used to doing to aid performance.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. I've got a question for Grant if you're still listening. He's put here, kind of makes me reflect, as you don't really remember experience imposter syndrome playing football. I've got a question for you, Grant, to think about, maybe add back into the comments of what was it that you were feeling then during football when you had your highs and lows, to see if that made you bring out any of those kind of things. Put it back into the comments. Lou, I really enjoyed that intrinsic motivation and actually trying to get the voices of what people feel are going to help motivate them or drive that, and understand what their own success markers are. Really difficult though, as the organisation grows, large organisations, it's hard to be more specific and recalled. How do you see a way around that? Is it more looking at the leaders and individuals, or is it, leaders, or is it the organisation?
Can I just pause? My head has just gone back to Grant's question.
Yeah, go on. Yeah.
No, it's really interesting because I have a load more questions for Grant, but I'm interested to know what do you think helped him in football to not experiencing that, and therefore what can he use now in his business world to support that? Because I don't know how long you played football was, but I'm assuming over the years all the way through, and therefore you developed the skills to manage that. I would also look at what went on for you in the bigger games, the bigger competitions, and how did you experience that? And actually, it might not be imposter syndrome; it might be that might be called other things. But yeah, I mean, we're different in different contexts, right? Yeah. And so that's why I think if you didn't experience in that football, what can you then transfer if you are experiencing that in the business world? What's great is that you've got the skills. Brilliant. Just exploring what they were and what they are and how you can use them.
Yeah, I love that. That is true coaching in true psych form.
Okay, sorry, what was your question again?
Intrinsic motivation, looking at kind of performances of individuals in organizations. But the more we can be unique to the individuals, the better we're going to create performance. Yeah. That's really hard as we get to the organization size of 1,000, 10,000, 100,000 people. How can we still create that in organizations?
I think, what I notice is that there's lots of training on being a manager and being a leader. I see lots of great training courses out there, and everyone goes through them. And some people have probably done about 5 or 6 different management courses. And I was like, we don't need to do another one. I know all this stuff. I think what people need is I guess each person's line manager or direct manager is your kind of coach, right? Their role is to support you, to motivate you from a task point of view, and I would suggest also from a human point of view. And I think that's the part about performance. If you're performance managing, you're managing the person, the human, as well as the employee, and actually, therefore, both need to be given the time. So, and I think first of all, companies need to give people time to manage, because you look at everybody's jobs and everybody's daily life, they're so busy that actually performance management seems to go down to the bottom. I'm generalizing here, but what I've noticed in some organizations is that if you've got, that's an important meeting, I just need to cancel or rearrange that line management meeting. So I would say people need to prioritize line management meetings. And I would say those meetings it's therefore important to check in with the human as well as the task. So it really is, how are you doing? No, really, how are you and what's going on for you? What can we do to support you? But also, what is it you love about your job? I spent some time asking people in different organizations, what do you love about your job? And they're like, oh, great question. Not been asked that one for a while.
Hmm.
Why not? You know, your line manager should absolutely know what you're passionate about and what motivates you, and how do they then help you drive that forward, rather than motivate you by what you're not doing.
Yeah, I think it's some really good questions that lead to that, right?
Yeah.
Like, what do you do? What do you do best at work? How can we get you to do more of that? How can we lean into that?
Yeah. What are the days when you look at your diary that you go, yeah, I want to get into work to have those meetings? What do those days look like? All right, how do we have more of that?
Yeah, and I think you put a nail in the head there about people should be prioritizing line manager meetings. I think when you become a manager, especially at a certain level, you have to understand what a manager is. It's not the task anymore. You are managing people doing the task.
Oh, and we're weird and wonderful things, and we're really difficult to manage.
Yeah, 100%. No, I'm just being very aware.
I mean, in sport, we can have high maintenance athletes and low maintenance athletes, right? Both are great to work with, just some take more time than others. And that'll be the same in managing. You're going to have high maintenance people to manage and low maintenance people to manage. That's okay. It's learning how to manage them and to motivate them to create, and to then motivate them together in teams, because we often work in different teams, not just one team. How to develop those, and we're just, we're not taught a lot of those skills from the early, at school, or just simple communication. And there's lots of stuff going on about in all those management leadership trainings. There's a whole lot about communication. There's not a whole heap about listening, and listening is way more important than talking, right? This is how we learn, is through our, a lot of listening is how we learn. We've got 2 ears for that exact reason. Yet we don't seem to have any sessions on how to listen, or even how to warm up listening. I did a session on that a couple of weeks ago about, all right, does anyone warm up their listening before they go into a meeting? And they all looked at me weird. Like, what are you talking about? So we went through just some simple things to warm up listening. And then they all do it, and they're like, yeah, it's great. How do we all have a diary? Those lovely work diaries we have, and we're booked an hour every hour. Where do we get a break?
Yeah.
How do you go from one meeting to another and not take in anything from your previous meeting into your next one? Say you're a bit annoyed. How do you not take that annoyance into your next meeting? It's not going to be helpful in your next meeting. But how do you not take that across? And we do a lot of work on emotions within companies, which I love. I love emotions. But that's a big barrier, They're really, really helpful things. But actually, because we tend to work on the task rather than the human, and the human's the one with all the emotions, we see emotions as barriers that stop us achieving stuff. But actually, you can switch that around. They're really, really helpful. But we don't. We kind of, we used to see emotions as a weakness, but actually they've got such strength.
Yeah, I think that's it. And I think there's 2 bits I want to point out. That one specifically is like understanding the strengths are there to support us, like use those emotions to a strength and enhance the performance. You said something earlier on at the beginning, near the beginning, about the relationship with a coach. Right, if you don't have that relationship, you go and find another coach. And it really, when you're talking about the manager being the coach of a company, you can't. It's not as easy just to go, well, me and the manager don't have that relationship, I'm just going to go find another manager. You have to figure out how that plays into everything else, right? It can't just be the relationship which is stopping you from perform. And actually, you need to notice that quite quickly and go, this relationship isn't working. I either need to move and shift roles into a different manager, somebody I do get on well with, or I need to find another organization to get that performance level, because we all want to perform, we all want to succeed.
And there's self-responsibility within that, and I think a lot of people find that quite tricky, right? Because actually, it's if you and the line manager don't get on and you don't have any other options, okay, then there's something like, what can I do? Well, I've got choices. Right, and it's really important to take back control over what's happening in your world. Well, I've got choice to stay with my line manager. Maybe there's other options. I could find a mentor I get on really well with and can work really well with, or I can get some coaching by Rich Turner because he's great, and then thank you, and then support, elsewhere. And that's up to me to do that. I'm not always relying on the organisations to do that. The same with, I think, emotions these days. There are emotions, there are responsibility to learn about, to manage, and often we're like, you've made me annoyed. It's like, actually, well, no, I'm annoyed because of something that's happened. And actually what's going to be really key to me is learning out what is it that's annoyed me so I can learn how to manage that. Yeah. Otherwise, athletes are like, that track really annoyed me. And that's the track's fault. So no, it's on us to manage it. Everybody's emotions are our individual responsibility, but once we learn about that and learn how to manage that, then that's great. We've got so much we can learn and develop, and that really kind of throws people further forward in their kind of emotional maturity journey.
Yeah, there's many a times I've blamed the weather and the hockey pitch for my performance rather than blaming myself. Look, and I'm very aware of the time, and I don't know whether you have a hard stop.
No, don't necessarily have I can go for another 5 minutes.
Perfect. I've got 2 questions, and so to be as succinct as you can, and I'll give you both questions. Okay. What strategies do individuals have to support their performance? There's a couple of key things that they could do. And then same thing in regards to leaders. What have they got up their sleeve that they could also do? I mean, we covered a couple of these. Just bring them a couple of key strategies or tools to use.
I think one thing is to focus on what you can control. Focus on the process rather than the outcome. That's really important. I think in terms of understand what you define as success. Go on a journey of yourself and know that that's lifelong, and enjoy it, and have humor. So key. We're humans, we're meant to go through highs and lows. We're meant to always make mistakes, and that's how we figure out we're not learning stuff, and then we've got to figure that out again. So be okay with imperfection and experimenting and exploring, and find some fun and comfort and interest in that, and in being curious. And I think for managers and leaders, I think it's really important to work out whether you find people interesting or not. Because, and it's okay if you don't, and maybe being a manager or a leader isn't what you should be doing, and that's okay. Because often I think people, to go higher, we're meant to be, success is going higher up the ladder. Is it? I don't think so all the time. And actually, higher up the ladder, you then become those managers and senior leaders. But actually, you might find the technical stuff of what you're doing was what you were passionate about, rather than being a manager or a leader. It's okay to say no to that stuff if you are not people orientated, or if you're one of those people like, I just like my own company and I don't like other people, and Christmas shopping is the worst time of the year because it's packed. Can everyone just leave me alone? So just, be okay with being you, and help others understand that too, that you don't always have to be a manager or a leader. You can be really really successful in your role, being really good at what you do because you're really passionate about it. And actually waking up, I am just so lucky to wake up every day and love what I do, and that far outweighs any titles or finance or money, bonuses. Yes, people might be driving nicer cars than me, not a problem, because I get up every day and I love my work and I love the people I work with, and and that's worth more than anything to me.
I guess the challenge there is when their answer for what does success mean to them conflicts with the progression in, like, if success means to move up business to earn more money, but then the only way they can do that within organizations is by becoming a manager and to move the organization up like that. And this is, I see some companies now who are allowing 2 pathways: technician and then people manager.
Yeah,
I think that's
yeah. So have a look at those pathways. But I'd also want to know, okay, why does a lot of money mean that to you? What is it that money's going to give you?
Yeah.
I'd want to dig down in that and then work out how do those answers lead you to better choices in what you do.
Yeah. The 5 whys as such. Why?
Yeah,
Why? Yeah, why? Tell me a bit more. Why?
Yeah.
That's a good question, isn't it?
Well, it is, but what questions are so much easier to answer than why?
Yeah.
So I would go what?
Yeah.
Why? Yeah.
Yeah. But with the same kind of process into diving deeper into the purpose of that, though, right?
Yes, purpose and values and that. There's a whole heap of that stuff.
Can I look? I know. Tell me if we need to finish now. I've got one more question.
Go on.
Leading on from that leadership piece, what strategies does a leader have to be a better leader, not just for themselves, but for the team they're involved in?
I think to be a leader, you've got to understand people. You've got to be understanding what a collective group of people need. You've got to be able to think on a feeling level, not just a task level. So you can, and to really understand and explore what psychologically informed environments are. And then how do you look at all parts of the system to work that out, whilst also who are your support network and who's your team that you can go to, and to always ask questions and ask for help.
Yeah, there you go. I love that. Thank you. To wrap this up, I've got a final question. Top three take-home bits of advice. You knew this was coming. I told you this.
I know, my brain is okay. Last bit. I would say 3 take-home bits of advice. 1, work hard on the things that renew your energy on a daily basis. I was just, I'll come to that later. 2, know that you're human. So if things don't go wrong, that's okay, because that's the same for everybody else. And 3, know that the journey of learning about yourself is really cool, and learn about it and lean into it.
Love that. Thank you.
And then the other thing that just came to my mind, just to wrap up, you're going to hopefully love this one, Rich, and I hope it's okay, is a while back I did a PTSD course, and the therapist on there said, as a psych working with people that go through PTSD, the 3 things you need to make sure is that you have good sleep, you have good food, and you have good sex. So I don't know whether those are the
I mean, you can change your answer if you want. Should we put those ones in?
No. I like my other 3 takeaways.
The 4th one, the added extra.
The added extra.
Lou, thank you ever so much. I really appreciate it. Everybody else, thank you for joining. Grant, thank you for adding. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Really, I love this because this is just my niche and my kind of things I enjoy. But Lou, if you need to run. If not, just hold there for a second. Everybody else, I will speak to you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.